Hello and welcome to today's video. This is my video talking about all the series that I finished in 2023. So here on this YouTube channel I talk quite a bit about starting a lot of series, needing to finish series, continuing on in series, how important series are, how many series I start, all this stuff about series. And I thought, you know what, let's have a look at the positive. So today we're going to talk about all the series that I finished in 2023. There are two types of ways that I'm going to be talking about this. One, series I finished and the series is also finished. Two, series I caught up with, so I've technically finished them, but at some point there will be more books coming out in that series. So they're not finished forever, but they're finished for now. And yeah, there's a few. We've got 6 that I caught up with and 7 that I fully finished. So to be honest, like, that's pretty good. Like, for 1 year, like, that's pretty good. That's more than one a month. So I'm definitely very happy with that. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you about them. What I'm going to do is when I talk about them, I'll put the image of like the first book in the series in here, and that will be the visual aspect. And then what I'll do is I'll tell you what the series is, quick basic summary of what it's about, maybe like genre or whatever, something like that. I'll give you my quick thoughts, and then basically like if I'm glad I finished it or not, because I feel like that's quite important. Like, there's some series that are just a bit annoying. Maybe you should have DNF sooner. I actually don't know. I haven't really planned this out. I haven't looked through, and I don't know the answers to that, but I'm excited to figure it out. So let's just talk about these series. So let's first of all talk about the 6 series that I caught up on. I've finished these series, but at some point there will be more books coming out in the series and therefore they won't be finished. So the first one that I'm talking about is Lore Olympus. This is a very lovely, very stunning graphic novel series which follows Hades and Persephone and their love story. It is a Greek myth retelling, but it does stray quite far from the original Greek myth. Personally, I don't know any of my Greek myths very well, so it hasn't bothered or affected me in any way, but I do know that it's like really not very like accurate as to how the Greek myths have been told. So I really enjoyed it and I'm so glad that I've caught up with it. I absolutely love this series. The artwork is just absolutely stunning and every single character is so unique and has such a personality, and because of the way the artwork is, you can really distinguish between the characters and see their personalities through the colours used. Like, a different colour and a different colour palette is used based on what character you're looking at. And I love both our main characters and like following them, but also all of the side characters that we have are so interesting and I'm so intrigued by. And although I'm glad I've caught up with this series, I am glad that there's still more to come out as well. Then I read From Blood and Ash. So there was only one book on this series that came out this year. It is the most recent book. From Blood and Ash is a fantasy romance, and I really enjoyed the first 4 books in this series, but the 5th book, the one that's come out this year, it was just really disappointing, to be honest. It was essentially the 90 to 95% of the book was us reliving the events of books 1 to 4 through someone else's perspective. It just wasn't necessary. I understand that the 5 to 10% of new information that we got was important, but if you don't have enough to write to make it a book, write a novella, make it good, write a short story, like write something else. Like, yeah, all the retelling and like seeing the exact same events that we'd already seen and already knew about just from someone's perspective with like a slightly different angle, it wasn't interesting enough. So I'm glad I caught up with the series. I'm hoping that the next book that comes out in the series will make me love it again, because the first few books were so good, but the one that I needed to read to catch up with the series, it just was disappointing. Then I also caught up with the Wayward Children series this year. This is the one that starts with Every Heart a Doorway, and this is, well, book 1 is magical realism, and I would say the series, depending on who we're following and what we're doing, kind of is a mesh between magical realism and fantasy, depending on exactly what's going on, and it's really fun. It's so good. So they are young adult novellas following children who have either gone through a door and like a portal basically to another world, or have come back through a door which was their perfect world and are now back in the real world and need to like get used to everyday life. It's such a good series. It's so lovely. And yeah, I started this year. I do believe that I started it in a reading vlog. If that is correct, I will link it up above. But yeah, I've ended up reading absolutely every single book. The audiobooks are also great for these. They are all on Everand. I do have a link down below if you want some 60 days for free, I think. Yeah, but yeah, they're all on Everand. I've read most of them with the audiobook, but then a lot of them, when I've managed to get my hands on the physical copies, I've read it with the audiobook reading along at the same time, and it's just honestly perfection. Yeah, I'm really glad that I caught up with this series. I'm really glad that I've read it all, but I also am so happy that we're still getting more and more books, and I will continue reading this series as long as they are coming out. I will say, if you are going into them, do check trigger warnings for, I mean, every book, because look after yourself, look after your mental health, but especially the latest one. There is a very good author's note in the beginning, and it really does, you know, set you at ease. But yeah, make sure you don't skip the author's note or the content warnings. Just look after yourself first when going into this one. Then I read Crowns of Nixia. So I've put this in the caught up but ongoing category, and I feel like that's correct because everything online says that this is going to be a 6-book series. I've read books 1 and 2. However, books 1 and 2 are also kind of a self-contained duology, and then books 3 and 4 are going to be like that, and books 5 and 6 are going to be like that. But I feel like because it's very clear that the 6 books total are going to be in this same series, this seems like the correct category for it, and I really enjoyed it. It is, I mean, it's fantasy romance, but a lot of it is like trials and games, and yeah, the first book especially was like a massive trial, and it was so much fun. I mean, I don't think there's that much to it. It's a very good fantasy romance, but a lot of plot and a lot of plotting within the book with the characters. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time, and I'm really glad that I read it, and I will be continuing on with the series. Then I read The Empyrean, which is a series that a lot of people have probably read, but they probably know better as Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is book 1 in the series. I read books 1 and book 2, the 2 that are currently out. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it, but on like a fun level. I'm glad I've read it. I will probably continue reading them. Like, the story's fun enough, but it's not anything special. It's not anything like amazing. Like, it's what you'd see in a lot of other fantasy books. I truly feel like the problem with this series is, like, I'm glad I read it, I had fun, and like I can like know what I'm getting into and then like adjust my brain for what I'm reading, and it was fine. But what I will say is, I feel like if the like explicit content, like, you know, the violence and the gore and the sex is just like toned down or got rid of a little bit, then they could have just marketed this as YA, and the plot is so YA. Like, if this was a YA series, I think it would be absolutely amazing because of the plot, but the plot isn't good enough for it to be like this new adult age range of a plot. Like, it's so predictable, it's so obvious, everything is very obvious, that that's why I can't love this series. Like, I think I gave both of the books 4 stars. They were both fun and I had a good time, and I'm glad I read them. Yeah, I don't know, like, I shouldn't be being this negative about them because, like, honestly, I'm glad that I read them. I just feel because, like, so many people are making them out to be like, oh my god, like, the next amazing thing, the next big thing, like, this is the book to read. I just feel like, yeah, read it. It was so much fun, but set your expectations. Like, it's not, if you're a fantasy reader, I would say it's not the next big thing. Okay, so it kind of reads like, so much of it is YA, like, especially the plot. It kind of reads like it's a fantasy book to get, I mean, it's aimed at adults, like, it's new adult age range. It kind of feels like it's to get people of that age range into reading fantasy rather than actually being for fantasy readers, if that makes sense. But I had fun, and I think if you can turn your brain down and just be like, oh, I'm just going to sit and have fun with this, like you would if you were reading a YA book, then no problems at all. And obviously, like, some of these books that I've mentioned and will be mentioning are YA books, and they were amazing. I don't know, it's a weird one. I'm just going to leave it like that because I don't feel like I've explained it very well, but I also don't feel like I'm going to explain it any better. I'm just going to start talking in circles. So let's continue on. I also caught up with the Supernatural Investigations, which is the Amari and the Night Brothers series. And yeah, I eventually read book 2. Book 2 was good. Book 2 was fun. I really loved book 1 of Amari and the Night Brothers. It made my favourites list of the year that I read it. And book 2 was just as fun. It wasn't as good, I don't think, but I feel like if you were actually middle grade, because this is a middle grade fantasy series, if you're actually middle grade age, then book 2 would be equally as good as book 1. I just feel like because the amount that you needed at the start of book 2 to kind of get you back into the story, make sure you haven't forgot anything, like really set the pace and make sure that it's clear what's going on. It made it feel a lot more middle grade than the first book. Like the first book really like transcended the age genres, like anyone any age would love it, and I still loved book 2. Like I still had so much fun with it, but I gave it 4 stars rather than 5, and I don't know, like it was really good. I'd really recommend it, especially if you know someone who is that like middle grade age category. I think they're great books. Yeah, I will continue on with this series for definite, and I hope to just continue to get more amazing books in this one. So those were all of the books in the series I've caught up with, but there will eventually be more books coming out in. But now we get to talk about the series I've finished, and the series is finished. So this is just completely and absolutely finished. There are 7 series that I'm going to be talking about here, and I'm super excited about all of them. So let's talk. The first series that I finished was the Sad Ghost Club. This is a very lovely graphic novel series, and we are following the stories of the sad ghosts, and yeah, it's great. It's lovely. I would highly recommend it. I can't say much because like I read book 3 this year, like volume 3. Book 3 kind of like continues on the story from book 2 and book 2 from book 1, but starts out as following one person and their life and just very much being like sad, and you know, it explores lots of mental health, I would say, but in a very subtle way, and it really just sets it out. It's YA, I'm pretty sure, a YA graphic novel series, and it's just lovely. It's absolutely stunning. The artwork in it is very simple, but because it is so simple, it really draws in like these different aspects and really makes you see like the differences between these characters and be able to follow them very easily. And yeah, I couldn't recommend it more. So yeah, really glad I finished it, and it's definitely one that I'll still be keeping because I can definitely see myself rereading it at some point. I also finished the Lunar Chronicles series this year. I only had 1 book left to go, and I was so determined at the start of the year to finish it, and I did, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. It is great. I'm so glad that I read it, and yeah, I don't have much to say. It's a YA series that I've been reading since I was a young adult, and I eventually finished it. And yeah, I feel very satisfied with it. It wrapped everything up nicely. It's like a sci-fi fantasy, like it's very much like a crossover between sci-fi and fantasy. It's really good, really fun. YA, follow lots of different characters. The more books you go through, the more perspectives to get added and the more different characters you see from, and every single book is in some form a fairy tale retelling, and yeah, so much fun. So much fun, and very satisfied by where everyone ended up in the end. I also read all of the Blood Mafia series. So this is an odd one. Honestly, I can definitely see myself reading similar to this again, but I don't remember this very well. At one point this year I was struggling to sleep, and I figured out that audiobooks were great for me because like my mind could rest, and you could put like a little timer on. So I could put a timer on for 30 minutes, listen as I'm falling asleep, and then when it ends just take my headphones off and I'll be fine. So I started doing that, and this was a series that I read like that. All of it was in one audiobook, and I don't think I really noticed the change in like book 1, book 2, book 3. They all carried on from each other very nicely, and I really enjoyed it. It was werewolf, vampire, paranormal. Let's go paranormal. It was like a paranormal romance series, but it was, I don't know, honestly, I don't know. It was very middle of the road, but I'm very happy I read it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It was fun at the time. I don't know if I'd recommend it. I don't know if it's like a series I'd shout about, but I had a lot of fun when I did read it. Then I also read all of the Bonds That Tie series. This is a 6-book series, and again, a fantasy romance. This one is a bit weird, where in this fantasy world, a lot of people have powers, but then on top of having powers, a lot of people also have bonds. That like some people are a central bond, and the central bond can be bonded to loads of other people, and these are like the people that they're meant to be with. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and the story just amped up and up and up every book. There was quite a bit of romance in there, but because there were so many characters, like it was very much like, you know, we were following lots of different people like find love in different ways. The plot was also so big, and the further on in the books we went, the less romance there was and the more plot there was, and I was just loving it more and more and more the more that we went into it. So yeah, really glad that I read it all. Will definitely read it again at some point, I think. Like I can definitely see myself rereading this series, and yeah, I'm really glad that I did. Then I also read a series called Frost and Nectar. Frost was book 1. Really enjoyed it, really loved it. It was very interesting. It was like the real world, but then there was also like a magical world attached to the real world, and the worlds knew about each other, but they didn't really interact until one day they do interact, and then I don't know, like our main character is technically from the magical world but lives in the real world, and then gets invited to go to the magical world to compete in a contest, but it ends up not really being a contest. I don't know how to sell this. Book 1 was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was like, it's fantasy romance, but it was very like slow and steady. It was very cozy, I'd say. And then book 2 was just weird. I don't know, like, I'm glad I finished it because I feel satisfied with the ending. But book 2 just went in a completely different like way than I expected, and to be honest, I didn't love book 2, and therefore I don't really have much to say about it. But yeah, that one was read as well. Then oh my gosh, there's still 2 more to go. Then I read Angels of Elysium. This was a very fun series. Again, each book we follow different characters. It's a fantasy romance, but there's always a plot involved, and essentially in this world, like, angels can be born. Like, when angels have a child, it is an angel, but to become an angel, that child must earn its feathers to complete its wings, and each of these stories in one way or another is following these characters earning their wings and the tasks that they have to go on to earn their wings. It was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it, and I would recommend it, like, if you just want like a fun little fantasy romance time, and each book you follow different characters. And honestly, I can tell that I really enjoyed it because this series as a whole actually had a trope in that I really hate, and I still wanted to read book 3. Even though I knew book 3 was going to concentrate on that trope, I still wanted to read it. So yeah, really good time, really glad I read it. I would recommend it. And obviously I can't tell you what the trope is because that would be a spoiler, but yeah, it was a fun time. And then last but not least, I actually read and finished my favourite series of the year. This took spot number 2 in my favourite books of the year. I'll link my best books of the year video up above, but this was my favourite series, and that was the Lady of Darkness series. Oh, I don't even know how to talk about this. Fantasy romance, dark. A world that, like, every book you just learn more and more about. Characters that you love, like both the main characters but also all of the other characters, and honestly by the final books you get so many perspectives and you see so many people that you just love all of them. And there's so many plot lines, so many things going on, so many magical things, so many different magical creatures, so many things to follow. And yeah, I couldn't recommend it more, honestly. It's a 5-book series, also with a little novella short story. Yeah, honestly, I'd just say read it. I mean, check the trigger warnings. I would say check content warnings for this one. This one is another one where it does get dark. It does get very dark and deals with a lot of serious subject matter, so do look after yourself first before picking it up. But yeah, it was really, really, really good, and I can't recommend it more, and I feel like I'm doing a really crap job of recommending it. In book 1 we have our main character Scarlett, who is acting as a noble lady, although she isn't really a noble lady. Really, she's an assassin along with her 2 sisters. And she meets I can't remember his title. When she meets him, he's like part of the army, like part of this army and where she's staying. He trains the army, and she starts getting training from him, and he thinks he's training a noble lady how to fight, and he has no clue that she's really this assassin. And it just goes from there, and it goes on, and there's like assassin lords, there's princes, there's kingdoms, there's wars, there's so many characters, so many things. And like, we have witches, we have vampires, we have fae, we have shifters, we have other things entirely that me telling you that they were a thing in this series would spoil it. Like, so good. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And that's actually a really lovely one to finish on, because yeah, that's probably the best thing. And yeah, it is, except for one book that took the top spot from it. This is like the best things that I've read. Like, if I didn't have a limit of only including 1 book per author from my like top 10, this could have easily taken up 5 spots. Easily. So yeah, I'm really glad I read this one, and it's a really nice one to end on. So yeah, those are all of the books that, no, not all the books, those are all the series that I finished during 2023. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's a bit more of a positive one, looking at the things that we actually completed. Do give it a like if you did like it. Subscribe down below if you want to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.